Valkyr's getting reworked. I did kind of want to demonstrate how she is right now, because she's really, she's not in that bad of a state, to be honest. She's quite strong as she is. But I figured it was worth talking about her in the context of the rework, what I think was done well in the rework, what I think was done less well, and just generally talking about it as somebody who's actually played a good amount of Valkyr. You can actually see that my Valkyr is pretty built out. We actually have full Tauforge purples here. I have a good amount of time on her. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I think was good and bad for the rework because it was neat. Okay, let's go over her passive real quick. Basic change is that as she gets kills, she'll get some melee damage. So you can see that it goes up to 300%. If you get a kill or if you get an assist, rage goes up. I don't think this part right here, this 300% cap, matters at all for people who have a lot of time in this game, specifically a lot of time on Valkyr. Because I think it's worth mentioning that like heavy gunners, even at level cap, are only going to have 4 million health. So even if you're including the steel path EHP, this is 103 million health. And Exibus units will tend to have about 5 times to 6 times more health. So we're talking about 600 million damage for a steel path Eximus heavy gunner at level cap. It will still only have like around 600 million health if you don't armor strip at all. And most people are going to be running like corrosive projection, so it's going to be much less than that, right? Here is her heavy attacks. It's like not that special of a build. Like you can see, this is what the exposure build was when I did this heavy attack. It's nothing special, right? We're just running a ton of crit chance, crit damage, and then we have 5 crit shards here. But it's really not that special, right? We're just making a big number with exposure. So even if you're running this version of it, which frankly isn't that optimized, like she's still going to kill most stuff. And it's to the point where most people will just run influence on her, even though she has a 10% status chance base, right? Like, I don't know. Doing more damage on Valkyr, if you have a half decent build on her, is just so not important. What I would say is that for players who aren't at endgame, this actually does matter quite a bit. Like for those of us that are pretty far into this game, this does nothing. But if you're newer to the game, like if you're just picking up Valkyr for the first time, this actually does matter. So in that way, I think it's kind of nice, but I would have much preferred this to be like parkour speed. Everybody can feel it. Like it's very obvious to feel. It always feels good. If this just went up to like 30% parkour speed instead, I would just be so much happier. It would give you a way to close gaps faster. It would put her closer to the move fast melee character, which I think would be way more fun. So I just don't agree with doing melee damage on here. I can kind of understand it, but I don't know. This could be better. But I do like the rage mechanic in general. I think it's thematically appropriate. I think it's in general in gameplay, it's going to be fun to interact with. So pretty happy with this. I also think it's pretty nice that they moved her invincibility to this instead. We'll have to see how the rage building feels when we're actually playing the rework to know if this like is enough survivability by itself. But yeah. So for the Warframe stat changes, probably the main one people are going to be concerned with is this armor change right here. So if you're not aware, what a lot of Valkyr builds do right now is they run Gladiator Aegis, so this mod right here, to get the 40% armor so that Arcane Battery goes over the 500 energy requirement that Violet Shards require. So your melee crit will basically double as long as you're over 500 energy. So in some way, generally Valkyr builds need to do that. It's worth noting then that this new armor value breaks that threshold because Valkyr Prime has 225 base energy. And with that 935 times 0.3, we actually get to 505. So this is enough armor by itself to just have Arcane Battery. Always above 500. So this is a very good change for basically everybody. It means you can either drop Gladiator Aegis or you could just keep it on and be slightly tankier. But either way, very good. If you're going to level cap, you can basically otherwise ignore these changes. But if you're not doing level cap stuff, what I would say is that there is actually an interesting threshold that's being passed here with these health changes. So what you can see is I just did the EHP calc here. So her new EHP is 1852. And previously, it was roughly half that. So you can see that before the changes, with no other mods equipped, her EHP was 931, right? So it almost doubled right there. I think this threshold is particularly interesting because there's something that I like to call the bombard number, which is kind of fun. And that is the point when bombards start one-shotting you. So this is how damage scales in general from enemies. You basically just multiply this number by whatever the base damage is, and that will give you how much damage like an enemy's attack will do. For bombards specifically, they do 25 base damage and then they do 40 splash damage with their rockets. So if you get directly hit by a bombard that's level 4, because that's their base level right here, it's going to do exactly 65 damage. But for us, it's mostly important because now Valkyr is not going to get one shot by bombards anymore with no other like health mods. So at level 100, it'll be 1217. At 150, you're getting one shot. At 125, you're still living. So roughly around 130, 131 is when you start getting one shot. because we have 1850 HP after the rework, right? Basically, she's just scaling better than she used to. And it does matter for like early steel path. So kind of neat. Grip line changes. Basically, it is a grouping tool now, and is also silly how fast it makes you go now. You can actually cancel this by jumping midair. I don't think they mentioned that anywhere outside of the dev rework, but if you press space, your double jump is getting refreshed after you use rip line. So this is just, in general, it's a way faster ability, and then it also groups at the end. So they did actually give us a radius here. So this radius does actually matter. So what this means in theory is that you really shouldn't dump range on Valkyr anymore. Not that you necessarily did before, you kind of just maxed out efficiency before and then hit things. This is probably one of the best grouping tools in the game now. You can actually see that it's ragdolling them too. So there might be some fun like affliction stuff you can do with her. Yeah, just in general, just a very good grouping ability that also doubles as a movement ability now. Very happy with this change, was waiting for Ripline to get changed forever. So super happy to see this change. Interesting thing about Warcry in general, it applies to allies now. I can't really think of anybody specifically that would super benefit from this, but you know, maybe there's some interesting interactions that you can do with it applying to allies, since it is her subsume also. So there might be like some summoning builds that you can do where like you summon a bunch of Swarm Gavats, or like you put this on Caliban or something, and then things just attack faster because you have Warcry subsumed. So that might be kind of fun, but generally this probably won't make that huge of a difference. And then it's also worth noting that like this is just a buff, like having more duration is just a buff. Warcry does actually have an augment. There's I believe it's called Eternal War, that basically just increases the duration based on your duration. And I don't know if you'll bother with it anymore after the change. Realistically, it wasn't that good in the first place. Warcry is Warcry. Your attack speed will be faster. That's about it. Paralysis is interesting, but I don't really think it's that valuable, all things considered. And this is going to be maybe a hot take, because 50% damage vuln is a lot, and this is going to apply like after roar and everything else. So like if you're using Valkyr just as like a murder frame, this is still going to be very good, right? Her big numbers are going to be even bigger. But I do think it's worth mentioning that her augment, this augment, if it says it feels roughly the same, the pull for this is actually pretty slow. And Valkyr now has another grouping tool, which is really good. Like, just look at this GIF. Look at how good the pull looks here. They do have range mods on here, so they're probably using like overextended and stuff, but like the pull is much faster, the ragdoll is much faster. So it, like if you compare this to the 3 augment, I don't think that's going to be that amazing. So if you need more damage, you probably keep this on just because like 50% damage vuln is still a lot. But if you don't need damage, you could honestly subsume over this. Not a huge deal. That's not to say it's bad though. Like this is still going to be a very good ability. It's just the most damage you can do is however much health the enemy has. And this does more damage than their health. So the Hysteria changes are probably the largest out of everything. And what I think I'm going to start with is actually the combo changes. If you're not really familiar with how Valkyr worked previously, her combos are a little silly. Most of these don't do any damage. So you can see that most of these are just 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. Or like, you know, her best one that isn't her slide attack, which I'll go over here in a second, is like her air attacks. And then the rest of these are kind of eh. This one's pretty good too. This is her ground finisher. But her best one by far was her slide attack. And you can see that it's actually doing 300, 300, 300, 300, 300, 300. And then it does that again. So this ends up doing, what is that? 3,600 damage? So 36 times whatever her base value is. And realistically, like if you're using this, what you'll see is that like the spin on the ground that she does first, and then the rising uppercut part, those are the two like 300 times 6 attacks. So generally you tend to like slide past an enemy and you'll do like 3 or 4 hits on them and then continue on. So like you can see, if I just spawn some dudes here, let's just slide over here somewhere. You can see this guy got hit like 5 or 6 times maybe total. But if you're in big groups like this, then it just ends up doing tons and tons of damage. And you just only would ever slide attack with Valkyr, with maybe like the occasional, if you need to kill one guy, you just like float in midair and then do this. But even realistically, like slide attacking was better for that too. So in that way, the combo changes make a ton of sense, right? So I'm just going to put the previous values up above here. So this is what they are going to be. This is what they were previously. So almost all of her non-slide attacks have been roughly doubled in damage, some of them even tripled. So like you can see our second heavy attack here is actually getting triple the damage, and it's getting force procs that it didn't used to have. So this is the elephant in the room right here, not being invincible all the time anymore. Kind of sad. What I would say though is I think this is a necessary change. I don't like the way that this made Valkyr just not interact with so many systems in the game. And it was also a little clunky to use. So if you're not aware, Previously, if you switched to any weapon that wasn't your claws, the invincibility would disappear. You'd like use your claws and you'd be invincible, and then you'd switch to a gun and then you wouldn't be invincible anymore until you like switched back. And so if you weren't meleeing, it basically restricted you from like doing anything. So in that way, it's almost like a quality of life buff because it means you don't feel stupid for switching to your gun anymore. I know that's kind of a cope take, but bear with me. One, you are immune to status now. So even if you're toxined or something, you would just ignore that now. So you don't even really need like rolling guard on this. You just need pure shield gate. So in that way, it's pretty good. This energy drain change is also very nice. Previously, like your energy drain would be very, 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 very fast. And so, you know, getting 1/3 of your energy back now that you previously couldn't is just very nice. This doesn't matter for most things. It's good for early game Valkyr. And I do know a lot of people will end up picking up Valkyr and then playing her through most of the star chart. So in that way, this is pretty good. And then this is just a clunky mechanic that used to exist where like if you would take damage, you would like lose your shields if you were nearby an enemy when you deactivated Hysteria. So this is, I'm glad this is gone. It shouldn't be that controversial. I think this was stupid. So I'm glad it's gone. Really, at the end of the day, removing invulnerability from Valkyr is probably a good thing. It will mean that you probably need to build some sort of survivability on here, so it might be like an augur mod, it might be that you run brief respite now, it might be that rather than shield gating, you do something else to deal with your survivability, so maybe you run like protective sling, but probably not. I think you probably just still run the melee combo for your focus school. This is going to be the biggest playstyle shift for Valkyr, in my opinion, is actually having to think about survivability. This is probably something that I'm going to be running after the rework. This is kind of what I expect to be good. The main changes you'll notice here is that, one, I'm running an augur mod on this. I was previously also, but like I didn't use this at all. So this is just how I'm going to shield gate. And then we have power drift on here. And then maybe if I find that this is not good enough, I might be running catalyzing shields over rolling card here. So this is probably just how I'm going to survive now. And then the other thing you'll notice is that I've switched to Arcane Strike over Arcane Fury here. So previously Fury was better because melee damage is good. But now that her passive gives her melee damage, I think Strike is better. Another thing is that I might be dropping Gladiator Aegis entirely. Right now I'm still running it because 1, the armor is good for lower steel path. And then 2, the melee combo is still pretty good. So even realistically, like if you're doing lower level stuff, I think this is probably just still what you run. So you just run extra melee combo here, melee combo crit. So this is probably what I'll do for most missions is something like this, but I'm not positive. She should be fun after the rework. She's still Valkyr, so to a certain extent, she still might be slide attacking all the time, but who knows? Maybe the grouping will be enough. Another thing I might end up doing instead is running stretch over something here. I don't know what I would drop necessarily, but I'm sure I could fit something in here. It would be good to have some extra range for the grouping of Ripline. I don't know, just something to think about. Okay, I think that's mostly it. Shout out to Vorpal Void for the Pharma gift, appreciate you. And then shout out to Velsva for the absolutely insane Omniforma gift. Don't give me Omniforma. I don't, no, that's too much plat. I don't need that, I just need regular Forma. I do appreciate you though. Appreciate both of you, so thank you. Hopefully that'll be it. I don't think I'm going to do a full Valkyr guide when the rework comes out. I think there's going to be 30 of them. So I just don't think it'll be that useful. But if people are interested in that, I can. I don't think I'll have that much to say that you won't see from other people though. So just thought it was worth going over these changes before they come out. Enjoy. Have a good night.